Well, good Saturday afternoon, everyone. It's Mark. I had some time and I had some thoughts in my mind, and I'd like to just share them with you, see what you think. So, I was thinking about the topic of what do we do with what we've been through? What do we do with what we've been through? Because we all go through things, we all process things different. Um, we all there's just so many factors. There's cultural relevance. There's how we were raised. It's where we come from. It's how our parents model to us how to deal with stuff. So some people try to, when they go through things, they ignore it, or do you put it in the closet, or do you sweep it under the rug, or what do you do with what you've been through? And what I've learned in my older age now is that we all go through things, and that's a given. But the issue is really, what do you do with what you've been through? How do you process what you've been through? Um, anyway, all right, Pastor Josh. Oh man, Bishop. He's Bishop to me. It's good to see you on here. So we're talking about what do you do with what you've been through. And of course, I have to talk about there's an overused word in our world, but I mean, I just got to be honest, it's the word trauma, traumatic experience. And I want to read this to you. Trauma in the dictionary says a deeply disturbing experience or an emotional shock following a stressful event or physical injury. And what I found out was I'm not as too cliche or afraid of the word in the church world anymore, because it's in Luke chapter 10. When the certain Samaritan, um, when he found the man on the way to Jericho, that he was beaten and he was half dead, the Bible says he poured in oil and wine, and he ministered to his wounds. And that word wounds is the word trauma. It's a Greek word. And so it's an invitation that even in our spirituality, there's this chance of things happening to us, and it happens to all of us. And what I tell people all the time, trauma will happen by chance or by choice. You make dumb decisions and traumatic experiences happen, or you were minding your own business and traumatic experience happened. But it's something that happens to all of us. And so today I just want to talk for a minute about this idea of what do I do with what I've been through? What do I do with that? And really, we should do some self-reflecting and say, what do we do with it? And how do you get through it? And how do you get past it? Because honestly, a lot of people get in a process of a healing, but they get stuck in the journey. And that's kind of what I've observed even in my own life. I just get stuck in a journey, and I've got to have some kind of different revelation to get beyond it. I need spiritual guidance, and I need an encounter to really help me get through all this. There's really nothing worse than having a traumatic experience when you're doing good, when you're dotting all your I's and crossing all your T's and living the best life that you can and helping people and serving and being faithful. But that happens sometimes. And so I've noticed some people that just ignore it like nothing happened, but they just keep pushing it down. They just keep pushing it down. And when things keep happening, they keep pushing it down. They don't say anything. They don't speak up. They don't deal with it in a sense of observing it. And some people just sweep it under the rug like it never will happen, like it never happened. But this stuff that happens to us doesn't go away. And what happens is, what I've learned, what happens to you, if you don't choose to process it and work through it, it will start happening in you. So what happens to you can happen in you. So it's one thing to have a traumatic experience in this outer world, in the world that you live in, but it's another thing to let that fester and then become a traumatic experience in you. And that's a whole nother thing. So, and we'll get into it here in a second, but what happens to you can happen in you. So the real trauma is not what so much per se happened to you, but it's what can happen in you. Let me give you an example. George Barna Institute, all they do is they interview churches all over the world and all kinds of churches. And he came up with this idea, and he questioned thousands and thousands of churches and leaders and people. And he came up to this conclusion that there's trauma situations in the church. And the number one trauma experience in church people, especially the world, is the death of a loved one. And the number two is betrayal, because it's a death of a relationship. Now, let me give an example. The death of a relationship, of betrayal, is a trauma that happens to you. But if you don't process that and let God work through you, work you through it, it will become a trauma in you. And it's hard to overcome once the trauma comes in you. The issue is when someone in our life passes away, the death of a loved one, that's a traumatic experience. When that happens, you have a grieving process, and you do the funeral, and you do the family gathering, and you do the memorial, and you put this person in the ground, and then you start the process of the grieving, and you can get through it because, it's done. But in a betrayal situation, is that relationship's been betrayed and severed and died and created a traumatic experience. The problem is, if there's no real resolution or working through that person you still have to see at the grocery store, that person you still, and so what I'm saying is trauma can happen to you, but if they don't process it correctly, it'll start happening in you. And that's a whole nother animal. One of the early mothers of the church said, be careful to don't let what you go through get in you. Don't let what happened to you happen in you. Because when it starts happening in you, then it gets more difficult to process and deal with, because it starts intertwining with your thought processes and who you are. Hey, Pastor Joseph, how are you, man? It starts working its way into your inner workings of your thought processes and your being. And, Hebrews chapter, hey, Spencer, how's good? How up? In Hebrews, it says, don't let a root of bitterness spring up and trouble you. So what happens is when trauma happens to you and we ignore it, we don't deal with it, we just blow it off or put it under the rug or put it in the closet. And it's okay to say, I'm not ready to deal with that now. But it's not okay to not do spring cleaning and get in your closet and say, what is some stuff that's really festering in my life? You see, so what I'm saying is, we got to have people in our life to help us navigate what happens to us. Because if we don't have these people in our life to help us navigate what happens to us, what happens to us will start happening in us. And that's a dangerous place. Like the man in Jericho Road, Luke chapter 10. He was beaten, left for half dead, and stripped naked. and people came by and walked right on by him. And so the issue is there was a traumatic experience happen, right? There was a traumatic experience happened. But then when people who could help didn't help, it created a traumatic experience in him. And what most people do is they don't know how to deal with what's happening in them. So we can't let what happened to us happen in us. But if we do, and we don't have the right people in place in our life to work it through, and know how to find forgiveness and know how to find some things in our life, it's easy to forgive and easy to judge and easy to say, this is what I would do if I were you, until it happens to you. So the guy's laying on the Jericho road, and here comes the church. The Bible says a priest and a Levite, the pastor and his staff came by and walked by him, and they walked by on the other side. So not only did he have the traumatic experience of what happened to him, he had the traumatic experience happen in him of the rejection from the people that he knew should have and could have helped him. And I don't know if you've ever been there, but when you're in a situation and you really need help, and the people who don't help or choose not to, that creates another traumatic experience in you. And we'll get into this later in some other talks, but what I want to get to is this. Trauma can happen to you. If you don't deal with it and don't acknowledge it and don't try to work through it, it will start happening in you. It'll start affecting your thoughts, your beliefs, your perceptions about other people and certain kinds of people. So you'll start seeing life through your trauma. Hey, Pastor Mark, man, how are you? Yes, that's why we're here in the first place, creating light from the darkness. That's exactly what I've been doing. But if we don't deal with the trauma in us, the experience that happens, it'll start happening through you. That's why the trauma training cycle keeps going over and over and over. You hear the expression of, hurt people, but really unhealed people hurt people. This wonderful lady that I follow, that she's an amazing prophetic counselor person, and she says trauma not transformed will become trauma transferred. And that is a powerful statement. Powerful statement. I love, Pastor Mark, your statement, our sufferings are worth more than gold. They are. I didn't see that at first. But in my older life, I'm realizing God is in all things, and he's working something in me and through me and to me. But in your first initial encounter of the traumatic experience, if you don't have a safe place to work through these things, it can become trauma in you. And when it becomes in you, it becomes hidden, and it's harder to see. It's easier to see what happened to you than it is to see what happened in you. And if we don't deal with what happened in us, we're doomed to repeat it, because it'll start happening through us. There was a study by the veterans, the VA organization, Veterans Organization, and the Mayo Clinic. They studied the Holocaust survivors. And in studying the Holocaust survivors, specifically concerning traumatic experiences, in studying these people, what they discovered was, and I mean, God bless them. I mean, that's a thing you probably can't get over, I'm sure, but it lends itself to what I'm talking about. the people that survived the Holocaust, something in their brain changed so that they could survive. And what happened is they passed this. There's a study in the Mayo Clinic in the VA or administration that says they passed this traumatic experience on to their children. And what they found was 91% of the children who were born from Holocaust survivors were inherently have anxiety and depression without ever experiencing any traumatic experience. So that's why I say that's why I spend my life wanting to create safe places where we can hold space for each other and share what we've been through so that what we've been through don't become what comes in us. But we've never had really safe places. And I remember we just live in a really unsafe world in some ways. And we have to be intentional about creating spaces for people just to be vulnerable and transparent and just say, this is where I'm at. And you need that other person on the other side to say, it's okay. You need the person on the other side to say, okay, I get it. I won't tell us so. I remember back in kindergarten, first grade, second grade, grade school, we always picked our best friend based upon, can you keep a secret? Because honestly, the people that we trust the most are the ones we know can keep a secret, still to this day. And we need to restore that back to not only our church, but our lives, our organizations, our families, our friendships. Can you keep a secret? So I've been talking about what happens to you, in you, and through you. And you can't let what you've gone through get in you. But what happens is, if we don't transform it, it can be transferred. And so that's why Paul said, evil communications corrupt good manners. That's why sometimes you hang out with the wrong people when you're younger, because they have these experiences and they pass them on through them. But there are people out there that have become immune to rejection, meaning it doesn't affect them like it affects other people. And the reason why is they had the antidote built in. Because they overcome rejection, now they're immune to it. Because they overcome slander and judgment, now they're immune to it. Because they overcame neglect and abuse, they're immune to it. So thank God. Thank God. The end of the road is a healed heart. But the first step is realizing I need someone where I can share. I need a safe place to open up. I need a place to be me. So the last question I have today, I just had this thought. This was the thought that I had, really. What do I do with what I've been through? Who do I trust with my stuff? Who do I trust with my stuff? And I can tell you today, in my older age, when people are transparent, vulnerable with me, then it creates a safe environment for me to be. That's pretty obvious, but it doesn't happen all the time. So who do I trust with my stuff? And I heard the Lord tell me this: a wounded man is always looking for the scarred man. A wounded man needs a scarred man. A wounded person's looking for a scarred person, a person with scars, so that they can trust them, because what it tells them is you've been through some things. You've been through some things, and not only through it, you've been healed from it. And the scar is a memorial, not of the wounds that we had, The scar is not a memorial of what I've been through. The scar is a memorial to tell you I overcame it, so can you. And when Jesus appeared to the disciples after the resurrection, they were terrified. I guarantee you, they were surely thinking they were going to be next, crucified. I guarantee it. The Bible says they were in a room shut up, and Jesus walked in right through the walls and appeared to them and said, "Peace be unto you." And they thought they saw a ghost. They weren't prepared for that because they were fearful for their own lives. There's this traumatic experience happening. I mean, Jesus, their Lord, the one they gave their life to, is gone. He's crucified. They saw it. They have the testimony and witnesses of it, and he's gone, and they're completely at a mental loss. That's trauma. And before the trauma started becoming in them, Jesus shows up. And when he showed up, he knew that they were afraid of him. So he rolled up his sleeves and he said, "Look at my wounds and see that it is me." And then the disciples were glad when they saw the Lord. In other words, it healed and stopped the traumatic experience from becoming to them, in them. It healed it because they trusted the scars of the man. So my wounds, my personal wounds, stuff I go through, I look for someone who's been through. So you should think about this. When I go through, I'm looking for someone who's been through. I'm looking for someone who, and when Jesus rolled up his sleeve and he said, "Touch my wounds," what he's really saying is touch my scars. There were scars there. The scars means it's something's healed up. It means I went through some things, but don't think about what I went through. Think about how I healed. And when you touch my scar and you realize I'm still going, then you can keep going too. And so that was a thought that I had in my heart today. We're doing some new stuff. I'm a certified life coach, especially dealing with trauma recovery and church hurt, and we have an incredible couples retreat thing that we worked really hard on. But I have a website. We've been working on a website. We have a team. We've been working on a website. It's not completely done yet, but I feel like it's time to unleash what we've been working on. It's called Breaking Biscuits. And Breaking Biscuits has been a 3-year project of ours. It's been a life-changing experience, and it's really helped many people break open instead of break apart. So I want to leave the website. It's not completed yet, but go there, check it out. And if you need or know of anyone needs life coaching, especially with church hurt and trauma or mentoring, by all means, get a hold of us, and please share this video. There's a lot of thought goes into it, but it's very important to me. What do I do with what I've been through? I can tell you what to do. Go find a man that's been through it. And that's how you find your space. That's how you find your healing space. That's how you do it. And we have to live in a world where people are not afraid to show what they've been through, but they lived again. Anyway, I love you. I'm going to put up the website and the info. Please share, contact. If you know people that want to hear this, need to hear this, share it with them. Tell them you need to hear this. I just really appreciate. Oh, thank you, Amanda. Pastor Lisa's on here. Cheryl, that's amazing. Taylor, how are you, man? I just love you. This is what I've devoted my life to help people live free and clear, and just get through, process stuff, and not be stuck. So if you know people that are stuck in their life, relationships, spiritual journey, share the website with them. And I'm going to put it up now. And I love you and hope to see you soon.